David Pollak grew up at Hakapa. He is now an educator at an elementary school down in Champaign. Hear what he has to say about growing up here, about Judaism, and about topics in general and in life. David Pollak, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
What's happening in beautiful, wonderful central southern Illinois?
Not too bad. It's 60 degrees today. So we went for a walk earlier, and that was a nice change of pace for all the snow we were getting too.
Are you happy down there? You like being down there?
Yes, I am happy down here.
What about, do you like living? I mean, I know people go to school down. You're in Champaign, right?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, I know people go there, but who stays there?
People like me.
Yeah, tell me, who are people like you that stay there?
I really like the university, and I got really close with a lot of people that either go to the university or work there, or different organizations that are kind of centered around University of Illinois. And then when I did my student teaching at Unity West, which is a little bit south of U of I really liked the school and my coworkers there, and just kind of decided to stick around. I had a friend the other day, because we were talking about how it's a small town, so everybody's related to everybody, which I think is really cool. And so she was like, "What's it like not being from the place where everybody's related to everybody?" I was like, "We decide to move there and then teach there."
Yeah, and what'd you say?
That's what I said. I said that you then end up choosing it anyway. So
So you're third grade you teach?
yes.
How's it going this year?
Oof. Teaching in a pandemic is not recommended. I have one of the classes that it's one of those things that the teachers from like first and second grade, they're kind of like, I don't know what was in the water this year. Like, good luck with this group of kids. They're kind of famous in that way. They are insane, but I love them. There's never a dull moment teaching, but there's definitely never a dull moment with this specific group. They are constantly keeping me on my toes. They have a lot of energy, and they're all over the place.
You're back in person?
We've been in person the whole year, yeah.
The whole year you've been in person?
Yes.
With all of them?
So usually I would have a class of about 20. The beginning of the year, they gave people the option to choose an all remote option that would be from a private company, or they could do in person with the school. And so about 85% of our school picked in person. So I have 16 instead of my usual 20.
That's crazy. What's it been like? And were you freaked out? And what's that like?
I was a little bit uncomfortable at first, just because in the summers I'm a camp director, and we had camp last summer in person, but we had a lot of crazy protocols that I was kind of helping design. And I actually talked with my principal over the summer to let her know what we were doing at camp, so we could kind of implement it at school. And some of those things that then got passed up the chain were denied. So I was coming into school with less guidelines than what made me feel comfortable. It's been pretty good. There have definitely been some issues here and there, but overall, most people have been able to stay in school for the full time. Quarantines here and there. Some people have gotten sick, but nothing, knock on wood, super catastrophic.
Any teachers get it?
A bunch of teachers have gotten it. Everybody seems to have recovered, and they didn't have very severe cases. I mean, they were miserable, but they weren't hospitalized or anything, which is very fortunate. But it's definitely easier to teach kids in person. That's not the argument. It's just what's safe.
Right. No, of
and
course.
we've been able to do it safely for the most part. Just here and there, some issues that we're kind of working through.
Well, I would imagine it would be, if it's a wild bunch of kids anyhow, put on all the protocols on top of it and trying to keep them stapled to their chairs.
Yes.
I would imagine do you use super glue or what?
We do the best we can. Is what we just had parent-teacher conferences this past week, and some of them were asking, like, how have you been able to do it? Like, we're just taking it day by day. It's nice having a little bit fewer kids, so it's 16 instead of 20, especially with this group. But they're only 6 feet apart when they're in their chairs. So anytime any of them gets the inclination to get up, which happens a lot, it's kind of like a whole crazy show.
All right, so I want to back up. I'm going to be a little different with you than I have been with the other ones.
That's fine.
Just because, I mean, I guess others have grown up here too, but you really have, you and my experience at Hakapa have paralleled one another.
Yes.
So I want you to talk, if you would, talk to me about growing up at Hakapa. What was that like for you? Be honest.
Yeah.
I haven't asked anyone else this question, by the way. So what's it been?
I mean, you and I have talked about my place in Judaism and my place in Hakapa a lot. And I think thinking about how I grew up in Hakapa, those ideas are all very similar. Um, it was a sense of community. I mean, it was that like Hakapa was a thing that like I went to and I was a part of, and I knew people because of it. And I didn't really. That was what was at the forefront of my mind, not necessarily the religious aspects of it. And so growing up in Hakapa, like that was my community. That's where I went on Tuesday afternoons and evenings. It's where I went on Sunday mornings. It's where my dad went to a bunch of meetings that I then followed him to. I mean, so there was so much tradition in the community and with the people that it is parallel with my upbringing, just because like that was what I did as a kid.
So what did you get out of it that community is, if it wasn't the religious stuff? I mean, that's what this community is, isn't it? A
Right,
religious community?
right. I think what I got out of it is the sense of belonging, and I'm trying not to use community again, but the sense of belonging and just like a group of people that all have similar ideas and similar interests, and whether those ideas were brought together because of religion or of proximity in living in the suburbs, and then what makes them stay together. So are they staying as a group because of the religious aspects, because they like one another, because of a number of reasons? And so I think it, in a way, it also taught me a little bit of like community loyalty, and just you can kind of ebb and flow a little bit on the ideas and the ideals that the community is practicing, but you're attached to the people, and that's what's important to you, and that's why you stay. That's what keeps me a part of it.
But you talked idea. You said ideas about 6 times in there.
Oh boy.
What are those ideas that stuck with you that are hakafa in your mind, that are your ideas?
I think the biggest thing when I think of Hakapa, and I'm trying to think of a good way to articulate it, but like we don't have a building, and everyone pitches in for each other and to help each other, and people have like a job description, and then they do like this much outside of the job description.
Well, that's your dad. No, that's your dad. But
It's my dad. Yeah, I mean, it's my dad, but it's also it's a number of people at Hakapa. I mean, I think of you and Bibi and Sarah too doing way more than what is in your title. And I think that to me is what Hakapa is. There's all these people that kind of step in and help and do all these different things. And you bring up my dad, and he's on this committee or that committee, and he's not like a one show pony kind of thing. I mean, he's doing all these different things, and same thing with everybody that's part of Hakapa. And so I think that is like the idea of Hakapa in a community that I think of, is all these people coming together who don't necessarily have a building or a facilities person, and are working together outside of their normal purview.
All right, so you drank the Kool-Aid of what we said, but
Yes,
did you actually feel that?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Okay, so that's the only idea, is just people doing a bunch of stuff that they wouldn't do otherwise?
Well, it's not the only idea. I think that's the most important in my eyes. And I think I know you, so I know you're simplifying it for the
I'm minimizing it, of course. That's why I'm laughing.
But I think that is like the core of what has drawn me and kept me to Hakapa. Is just there's all these good people, and you think about any number of people and any number of disciplines that you would want to resemble, and Hakapa has them. I mean, we have people from all over doing all kinds of things in their professional lives and their personal lives, and they all come together and then, like I said, do all this extra work for the betterment of a community, either Hakapa's community or the other ones that we help partner with.
Well, so David, I don't want you to think that I'm leading you on to give me the answer no,
Okay.
because I'm really not. It's an open question.
Yeah.
Is that really enough?
Enough.
When you think of okay, that's nice in a really important way, not in a pejorative way. I think that's really what you say is great, and I'm glad that you own that. But is that for being a Jewish community, for being a synagogue, is that enough?
For me, it is, and I don't know. I can't speak for other people and what their priorities are, but that's the priority in my eyes. I mean, I can't picture joining another Jewish community other than Hakapa. And I know when I was going out to school, my dad was always making jokes about. He's like, "Yeah, you need to go to the Hillel. Like you need to do that kind of stuff." And saying it because he knew that I wasn't going to do that because that wasn't an interest to me. What is an interest to me is doing things with Hakapa. And whether it's the religious parts or whether it's everybody's pitching in together to lift the ark out of a van to put it in a different building, that's what interests me. not necessarily the services. So finding services elsewhere is not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for Hakapa and only Hakapa.
So, well, that's really sweet, and I love that. And I can't wait till you become president, especially because
thank you.
I want to cruise around in your truck, but
Okay.
what, just in the back. What, but
Yeah.
so what is Judaism to you that resonates beyond this community thing? Because you just said what Hakapa represents to you, but what is Judaism then to you?
I think, and not everybody may share my definition, but to me, Judaism and Hakapa are one because that's what I've known. Um, and I think about the experiences that I've had, like that. Those experiences are what being Jewish means to me because those are the experiences I've had being Jewish. And so there are, I'm sure, other experiences and other different aspects of Judaism and all different groupings of it, but Hakafa's Judaism Kool-Aid is the Judaism that I know and that the Judaism that I define.
Yeah, I want more. You're copping out on me, and you're actually, and I love it at the same time. I love it and I hate it at the same time, right? Because I mean, look, I happen to love what we do here too,
Mm-hmm.
right? But if we haven't given you the opportunity to experience, explore, and feel beyond our own limited viewpoint, haven't
Mm-hmm.
we failed you?
No, because I don't think you have, because we've done all those different conversations in. I can't necessarily attach it to confirmation class because I did that weird. I was with one grade and then the other grade, and but when we did all those different trips to all the different other houses of worship, the conversations we always had were very open, and it was never comparing in the sense that like, well, they do this, that's weird, and we do, like, it was just an open dialogue. And I truly feel that if anybody after one of those visits had said, Rabbi, I think I'm kind of more aligned with that, you wouldn't have been offended. You would have had a discussion.
Oh no, it would have killed me. It would have killed me.
I think you say that, but I don't know if that's really true. I think that you are very open and understanding, and I think that it sells you and Hakafa short to say that you haven't given other experiences beyond Hakafa, because I think that is the essence of Hakapa, is like understanding your place in the world as one thing, and then knowing there are others around you. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, yeah, but we didn't do that well enough within Jewish community, obviously, because if all we showed you is a Muslim community, a Baha'i community, et cetera, and didn't give you interactive experiences with other Jewish communities, how do you know what you don't know?
You don't know what you don't know. That's life.
Yeah. Okay. So you also worked at a Jewish day camp. You still work at a Jewish day camp.
Yes.
Why? Why, if Hakapa is the community, then why did you take the job there?
Well, I started at the camp because of Jeremy and Nathan Lee, who we were friends from preschool, and they signed up to do the camp, and I signed up to do the camp, and I haven't left since going into kindergarten. So I think this is going to be my 20th summer there, maybe. And as I described to you why I stay at this particular camp and why this camp is very important to me, you may notice a pattern in the sense that we also don't have a building, and we also don't have all the different support staff that we necessarily need, and everybody does everything in the world outside of their job description. Yeah. And so I think then once is an accident, twice is a coincidence, 3 times shows intention. We've talked about that before. We're getting to the point where Jewish institutions, to me, are this sense of people going outside of their purview and helping others, and everybody pitching in.
Yeah. Okay, so it's a Jewish camp. I thought it was a JCC camp.
Yeah, it is a JCC camp. Okay, but we don't have the JCC anymore.
Oh, that's right. But you still meet as a camp.
Yes.
All right. And are you responsible now? You're like assistant director or something like that, right?
I'm the director of sports camp on paper. Yes.
But again, you do lots of stuff. Are you responsible for any of the Jewish stuff?
I am not. No. We have there's an adult Jewish educator who is a year-round employee, and she's responsible of the Hebrew immersion program. Mm-hmm. So she's kind of taken on that role.
Okay. Is it familiar? The Jewish stuff familiar to you there?
Yeah. Yeah, and I participate. We have like an all-camp Shabbat every Friday where we've tried to make it more of less about going through the motions and more again about bringing that community in. So we all, even in COVID, we all kind of got into the same general area, and sang songs and did the blessings and kind of gave like end of the week shout outs to people. And it was like this whole big celebration at the end of the week. Whereas when I was growing up, it was more so you stayed with your group, you drank a little grape juice, you did the challah, and then you had lunch kind of thing. Now we're trying to make it into a more fantastical celebration because that's kind of what it is.
So when you went off to Illinois, you did not participate Jewishly down there, quote unquote?
No, no, I did not.
At all?
Not really.
Everyone
But I came back a lot of weekends, so I didn't. It wasn't like I was gone on a sabbatical from Hakapa. I mean, like I was.
Right. So you didn't. So you never did the bagel brunches Sunday mornings with the Hillel, or never got hung out with Chabad there that everyone seems to hang out with. Because I'm still getting money requests from Chabad because of your generation. Interesting. Did you hang out with Jewish kids down there? Did you find yourself attracted to? I mean, going that direction, or just with the education school? How'd you find your group there?
A lot of my friends were from different organizations I was a part of. So I know like freshman and sophomore year, a lot of my friends were from the College of Education or from like the summer intro to college program that I did. I'm still like best friends with the guy that I was randomly assigned to as a roommate. And so a lot of my friends early on were from that. And then as I got more involved in different organizations, like my student alumni ambassadors program, that's kind of where my friend group developed there. So I was friends with people who were Jewish. That wasn't why I sought them out or how we were connected. It just, we were friends, like, oh, we also have this in common.
Interesting. So really, the success that we as Hakapa have as a religious institution really comes down to you. Not you specifically, but you, right? I mean, one who grew up here, who loved it here, who carries it with you. Mm-hmm. So what is Judaism? You're 26 now, 24. You're 24. You're 24 now. What does Judaism look like to you now in your generation?
I think, I mean, to me, it's the same. It's still the sense of community and the sense of belonging and the shared ideas. I know I texted you after we did High Holidays on Zoom, but that was a very connecting moment for me for Hakapa because I haven't been able to be at services in a long time because I live down in Champaign. And I think, again, like I said earlier, I'm not seeking them out because I don't want them elsewhere. I want Hakapa. Yeah. And so it was nice for me to be able to do virtual connection to Hakapa in that regard. So I mean, for me as a 24-year-old, it's the same kind of, that's the same thing I'm looking for still.
Yeah, but this is not talk about you. Let's look across the board at your age demographic and the people that you know and the friends that you have and the conversations that you've had. What does Judaism look like to you that way?
I think the young 20s to 30s is all about kind of figuring out your place in the world still. I mean, a huge chunk of growing up is too. But I think that Judaism plays a role in that. And so figuring out how Judaism and what kind of angles of Judaism help you define who you are and who you want to be as you get older, maybe start a family, things like that. I see how that would be how it plays in.
Okay. So you're planning on staying down there for a while?
I think so, yeah.
So I would imagine that the environment is much different there than it is up here in terms of bubbles.
Yes, a little bit.
Tell me about living in COVID down there. You've already alluded to it with the school being open. What around prior to the election, through the insurrection? What's been the energy down there? What has your experience been down there?
There have been both sides to it. I think as a university town, it's pretty liberal leaning. There's also a lot of country land and farmland, which is again, I'm generalizing, but very typically red. And so there's a lot of kind of conflicting ideas and a lot of tiptoeing, especially working in a public school, which is somewhat divided. Again, I don't think I could even come up with a percentage breakdown of the families in our district because it's so fluctuating. Like I know, for example, just recalling, and not that it's related to politics, it just makes me think of it. Um, Last year there was a student who was wearing a Confederate flag sweatshirt at school, and it was one of those. Some staff had conversations with them about what that means to other people, um, and but at the end of the day, as a public, like, we couldn't tell him not to wear it. We could just try to educate the second grader and therefore their family about the impact that that would have, and not necessarily having a very racially diverse school. It's hard for some people to see past that. Um, I have some diversity in my class this year, especially, and I'm really grateful for that, and I'm really close with the families that I have in my class, and so I've spoken with the parents about the impact of that situation happening last year on them, and it's disheartening for them, and it's disheartening for me for people to say, well, it's not a big deal because it's not impacting a majority of people. You kind of think about majority versus minority. What's what's right, what's wrong. Does it matter if it only hurts one person or if it hurts 1,000? And so I
Well,
think that's
yeah.
something that we're still working through.
What about people your age group and your friends? Did you sense some of that diversity in terms of opinion around the election and stuff amongst your cohort down there?
A little bit. Most of the people down here, I would say, like, that are part of the university. Again, I don't want to generalize. It also just might be the circles that I'm a part of. But a lot of people seem to share the same ideas that I have, which I don't think personally are left or right ideas, just good of humanity ideas. Um, and so I think we shared a lot of those. I know the older generation that's in the community might be a little more broken apart.
So what? So the good of humanity. What are those ideas and ideals that aren't left or right in your mind?
Um, I think just, I mean, loving each other, and it doesn't, and appreciating difference and recognizing difference, and being okay with it. I think a lot of the times, I mean, I've seen it floating around Facebook a lot, and I'm gonna misquote it, but saying that you don't see color or don't see race is not a solution because it's there. Why are we pretending it's not there? It just shouldn't matter. Or it does matter, and you recognize how it matters in the ways that our society is kind of built. And that's something that I'm really trying to work through with my students, and we've had a lot of really good conversations. I have a couple black kids in my class, and we were talking about Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks and Ruby Bridges and the impacts that they've had through the civil rights movement. And one little girl who was white raised her hand, and she's like, "I just realized if they didn't do what they did, he wouldn't be in our class." And that was just like a very cool moment that, like, I saw the light bulb go off in her eyes.
Hmm.
And so I think, again, just having those conversations and talking through things with kids. I mean, my kids are 8 and 9, and they're starting to get it, you know.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to teach my personal beliefs. I'm trying to teach the ability to dissect through opinions and things and have them come to their own conclusions. But I think having those conversations about someone in history's impact on, like, right now, today, that other 9-year-old wouldn't be in this class if they didn't do what they did, speaks volumes to the ability that kids have to understand those things in difficult conversations.
So why can't we love one another?
Oh, I don't have an answer for that.
What's your gut reaction? What do you think the
Why
issue
can't
is?
we? I
Yeah.
think I think it sounds pessimistic, but as a society, more people are concerned with themselves than others, and I think that's what it comes down to, is they would rather choose um, ideologies that would protect their own benefits and their own backgrounds than stick the olive branch out or kind of take a risk and see what would happen if we protected somebody else's. And I think that, again, generalizing an entire mankind, but I think that's part of the problem.
I had a conversation with a woman with whom I worked at the Jewish Council on Urban Affairs, and I said something similar. I just don't get why we can't all get all. It was something like that,
Mm-hmm.
and she said, "Try not having money and asking that question."
Right.
Right. The idea being is that those of us who are privileged enough to live comfortably enough to be magnanimous enough because we benefited. And I'm trying not to get. I mean, again, we're coming to those words: privilege, white privilege, what have you.
Right.
But I mean, so respond to that.
I totally agree. And what that made me think of is my roommate and I just watched a movie, I Care a Lot. or I care
Oh, you
about.
watched it? You
Yeah.
watched it? I was thinking
Yes.
about. I was thinking about watching that last
It,
night.
it's very, very good. It is very depressing because it is so plausible, and that kind of speaks to this selfish ideal revolving around money. Basically, the premise is this woman is a court-appointed caretaker of people that fall ward to the state, elderly that fall ward to the state, and she ends up being just a con woman, just sucking money out of them. So like she puts them in a home and then sells all their belongings and doesn't let their family see them, and it's an awful, awful story, which makes it a really good film. But um, that kind of made me think of that while I was watching it. Is if money wasn't relevant, she wouldn't care about these people and destroying their lives. She only cares about destroying their lives because she gets money out of it and because she's self-focused. And she doesn't care that Joe Schmo doesn't get to see his grandson because she's totally blocked that off from happening because she wants to drain the finances. And so I think what this woman that you had a conversation with, I think, hit it right on the head. I mean, everyone's selfish and self-centered, and not everyone, but cares about the money, and therefore that becomes the priority, and not the other people who don't have that money or the ability to have those opportunities that you're going for.
So, have you, other than this significant act of a kid wearing a Confederate shirt,
Mm.
have you experienced, or have you seen, or have you been with people of color and experienced racism?
At first reaction, I want to say no, but I know that digging deeper, I'm sure I have, and I'm just not placing it. Um, Again, like for example, um, two of my friends, one's black, one's white. We were all driving down to Alabama, and we got pulled over right at the end, like right when we got to Alabama. And the traffic stop was fine. I don't remember if I was driving or my friend Lucas, who's white, was driving, but that was what it was. But like our friend looked over, and it was like that could have been way different if I was driving. And so again, like not experiencing the racism and bias, but knowing the potential that was there.
How'd you react
Um,
to that?
it was it was hard to hear. It wasn't something that we hadn't thought of, but again, it was hard to kind of for it to be brought up. Um, and that's one of those things where I feel very helpless because in that situation, I don't think I would have been able to do anything, or the fact that I was white being there did something, and that's wrong. That was what it took, you know. And so I think it makes me very, very uncomfortable not having those conversations about race, but just I like having solutions for things. I'm a fixer. I like helping people and knowing what to do, and those are things that I don't have the solution for right now, and that's hard.
It still amazes me that you actually found the houses that we worked on during
Yes,
the tornado and took a picture and sent it. That to
yes.
me was so fantastic. Not that I mean, I listened to the rest of your story, but I was stuck on that part
No,
of
I
it,
know. Yeah,
which was great. For those who don't know, we went down after one of the tornadoes and did some rebuild probably about 10 years ago. David was there, and when he went back to Alabama, took the picture of the house that we fixed. Have you experienced anti-Semitism?
not not directly. Like no comments or things being made to me. I know I've seen things that have been written in chalk on campus or something like that, and I know I've heard of experiences from friends of mine. Same kind of thing. I think anti-Semitism is such a broad term like racism, right? I mean, it encompasses so many things, and so people can be anti-Semitic or racist by just being ignorant, and they're not intending to harm, but in their total oblivion of not understanding how somebody could ever be different than you, um, that is anti-Semitic or racist or prejudice. And so, I mean, I think my dad talks about like when he was in college, his roommate assumed because he was Jewish he had horns, and that's something that I never experienced, fortunately. But like, it's just disbelief to me that someone could be completely ignorant to like think another human being had horns just because of the God they chose to worship or the religion that they choose to practice. Um,
Do you know where that comes from?
I don't.
So it's because the same thing happened to Rona. Her freshman roommate assumed the same thing. It's because in the Bible, when Moses came down with the Ten Commandments, he was shining so brightly that he had these rays coming out of his head that no one could look at him. And the word for rays is the same word as horns. And so artists of old portrayed Moses as having horns. And so there you go. Now, I doubt the people that carry this are largely art historians,
Right.
but it caught on, right? So your
Right.
dad, I don't remember your dad telling me that that happened to him as well.
Yeah, I remember that story growing up and just kind of, I mean, he and I would never have a lot of conversations about religion just because again it was like Hakapa was where we like that was the routine. But I remember that coming up when I was going off to school, him just kind of mentioning it and just being like, yeah, people don't necessarily know all the experiences and maybe unfamiliar with things. Not that he was giving it to me as a warning, thinking it was going to happen, but just kind of in conversation, this was my experience because people just didn't know.
Hmm.
And I think teaching in the area that I teach in and with the kids and families that I do, sometimes that again, I think my class and the families that part of my district are great people. I don't have any animosity towards any of them. I think there's just again, some of them have not left Tolono, and so they haven't experienced other things.
Well, look, as I'm thinking about the questions I've been asking you, there is an implied prejudice in my questions that we are the intellectual elite who get it, the
Mm-hmm.
liberals who see so broadly,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to them down
Mm-hmm.
southern central Illinois. And I know that people feel that, right?
Mm-hmm.
First of all, so let me be clear, is that I'm not asking these questions for that reason, because
Right.
to some extent the bubble in which you find yourselves a lot more quote unquote honest than the bubble I find myself, or the one you grew
Mm-hmm.
up in, right? And if we're looking at racism alone, the suburbs exist. Wilmette up through Highland Park and beyond exist to
Because of it.
keep black people out.
Right.
So I don't want to imply here that I think this is just a southern or central rural kind of thing. These are real
Right.
questions that I'm asking you.
Right.
So I just want to make that clear. So why education for you? I mean, I know why, but why? You tell me why.
I that's another. It felt right. Growing up, I was always working to help people or teach people. My entire family, except for, I mean, my mom was going to school to be a teacher, except for my dad and now maybe my sister, but we'll see. Still up in the air if she'll become a teacher or not. It's teachers and educators and principals and things. And so I genuinely feel like teaching was in my blood. I think it was just something that you learn by your environment and you learn by experiences. And unfortunately, all the experiences I had with my family members were very teaching those who don't know and educating. And so that's just kind of what felt right. And that's what I wanted to keep doing.
And what have you found that is most right for you teaching so far? This is your third year,
This is my second year.
second year. What have you found what resonates most with you?
I, I think, again, like those light bulb moments that I talked about earlier, I think that's really powerful. I think just being with kids. I mean, I love camp, and there's less teaching that happens at camp in a classroom, obviously, but there's still learning that happens. But I think just like being with kids, they have a crazy amount of energy and potential, and I think it's just really special that I get to spend the day with them, teaching them teaching me, us kind of diving into things together. I think that's really cool. Just the experiences that I get to have. Like I get to hang out with 16 kids all day. Like that's amazing. And I know some people are like that is the worst thing in the world. Don't even bring that up to me. But that to me, like I'm lucky that I get to do that as my job. The surrounding things with teaching sometimes not as lucky. The paperwork, like that kind of stuff. But when you kind of shrink it down and make it minimalistic, you get to hang out with kids all day. It's awesome that I'm getting paid for that.
And what's been the most surprising thing to you?
Well, after not completing my first year because of a pandemic, and then starting my second year with a crazy class in a pandemic,
There you go. Next question. Next
yeah.
question.
I mean, it's surprising how much happens in a school in a school year. I mean, you think about like you're always prepared for any kind of situation, but kids are so much more than the student that they are in the classroom. And I think I find that especially like in talking in conferences, when I describe a student's behavior in class, good or bad, and then the parent says that's not how we see them at all at home, you just see that everybody is kind of multidimensional. And I think that I knew that going in, but just kind of my eyes are opening wider and wider to it. Like there's so much more going on to every human being, but students especially, than who they are in the classroom.
Hmm.
Um, and kind of figuring out how to hit all those different dimensions in the right way and
It's all, I
connecting.
mean, look, if you are willing to look at each student as an individual and a microcosm of a greater system of their own families alone,
Right.
that's a lot of work.
Yes. Teaching is a lot of work.
It's a lot of, well, the teaching is a lot of work, yes,
Yes.
but
But I
but
understand what
even
you're saying.
however far you go, I mean, because you could just look at the now 16 bodies in front of you, get in
Mhm.
there at 7 a.m., leave at 6 p.m., which is a lot anyhow. Go grade and be done with it. But if
Right.
you're willing to invest right in the beyond, that's
Hmm.
that's really a lot of responsibility.
Hmm.
Do you think that's your responsibility?
I don't think it is my responsibility. I think I define being a great teacher as making that your responsibility. I think, and there are a lot of different ways to define being a great teacher, but I think I always try to find, and I tweet about my kids all the time because I find them funny and I'm trying to keep a log of the funny things they do. And when I share them with my parents, my mom always talks about how, like, you could have a teacher in this class that would write that kid off, like, that's not funny, whatever they're doing, like, they're being disruptive, they go to the principal's office, whatever. She's like, but instead you find them entertaining and you spin it into a positive. It's entertaining for you, but you're seeing the potential that they have.
Mhm.
And I think, again, that can be exhausting, especially if you think about the 16 students or the 16 students' families or the bigger nebulous that they're a part of. But I think that's what makes it special and unique, and the kids can get that from you even if you don't explicitly say it. Like, I think my kids know that I find them enjoyable to be around.
Hmm.
And I think I know that there are kids that I had last year that are in classes this year that they know their teacher does not enjoy their presence, and I've seen the impact that that has. Um, and again, that's really depressing to see that they can go from one extreme. And I'm not saying I'm the perfect teacher, but I can see them going to a class in fourth grade, and it's going absolutely horribly. And I know it's because they get no respect from their teacher. So why are they going to give their teacher respect?
Mm. Mm. Do you live in the
I,
district?
I'm sorry.
Do you live in the district?
I live outside of the district,
Okay.
like 20 minutes away.
Do you think that's better to live out of the district or to be in the district?
I could see it going both ways. Again, with it being a small town of 4,000, depending where you live, you see all of your class, half your class.
Right.
So I like that. I like the idea of being a small town and everybody's related to everybody. I mean, teachers have kids in the district, and cousins and sisters work together, and my mechanics kid is in my class. Like, it's a whole. I like that. I don't know if it's better or worse to live as a part of that or a little bit removed to give yourself a break.
Have you noticed? Right, you get this question as a elementary school teacher. You get that question somehow, I'm sure.
Yep.
So I want to try to ask it a little differently. Have you found that um, women are treated, women educators, female educators, are treated differently than you are as a male,
I think
or
yes.
do they perceive it? Go ahead.
Yeah, I had a conversation recently about this. And again, I know this is only my second year, so I haven't experienced a ton of it. Um, I'm also sensitive to that conversation. I would never want to be hired just because I'm a male teacher. I know that I stand out because of that, and then I hope that that kind of gets the attention, and then my empathy and my teaching style, that is what gets me hired. Um, and someone I work with made a comment about that recently, just kind of saying, like, well, you were hired because you're a guy, and, like, we need more guys in the building. And I took a little bit of offense to that because I don't want to be hired because of my gender, just as though they shouldn't be hired because of their gender or fired because of their gender. Um, and so there is something to be said about women and male teachers being seen differently.
Mhm.
I think too, it at a broader sense, just like gender perception, and just, again, generalizing. But like, if I go in and talk to my administration about an issue, they think that I'm maybe being proactive or handling the situation, or I've found something that I want to bring up to their attention. Versus if one of my female counterparts does that, like, they might be seen as complaining or something. I mean, so I don't think sexism is outside of the school. environment. I think it's very much a part of it as well. Um, I, I don't think our school discriminates as much as I've seen in other places, if that makes sense. But I mean, there is sexism everywhere, just as there is prejudice everywhere. Is that
Yeah. So I would imagine that one of the difficulties of being a male elementary school teacher is the expectation that you're only going to be there a few years and then move on to administration. That men have that experience, that expectation that if somehow you decide to stay in the classroom, you are not living to your potential. But a woman who decides to go into administration is going beyond what is expected. Is that still true?
again, that's hard to say as somebody who is possibly starting grad school in the fall for administration. um,
Oh, that's brilliant. Oh, I love
yeah,
it.
so I could see that. I know I forget who I was talking to, but we have a principal and an assistant principal in our building, and I kind of lumped them together for the cause of some kind of conversation. And somebody naturally flip flopped them. Our principal is female and our assistant principal is male. And in talking about them, they somehow got it backwards. So I say somehow, but I'm assuming because of like what you said.
Yeah.
So I think there is some truth to that. I also think that I think, like we talked about with students, everybody is multidimensional and has a lot of things going on that you can't see. We talked in class about it being an iceberg. So you can only see like what percentage of the iceberg above the surface and then so much more underneath. Um, People talked about in undergrad me being one of the only guys in my cohort, and saying that must have been nice, and sometimes they're like that must have been weird. You're with all the girls, and like that doesn't really matter to me. But to me, my teachers were always very aware of my presence in the classroom. I could never be off task because they always saw the guy in the classroom versus
Wow.
the other 19 predominantly white girls in the class maybe could kind of fall into the background and be texting on their phones or something and again I'm generalizing, but I think when you kind of take a step back and look at everybody's identity as a series of different experiences, sometimes good, sometimes bad, and it's really hard for someone on the outside to judge. It's similar in the sense that I have a female principal and maybe that is what I'm used to, but somebody else is not used to that, and it's weird when I talk about a principal and assistant principal and they flip it on their own.
So why? Yeah. So now I got two questions for you. One, did you feel vulnerable being the only male? Did you, in terms of that, did you feel like that you were being pinpointed in a way that they expected something different from you? Was there a vulnerability?
Vulnerability in the sense that sometimes, and it happened very rarely because I do think the instructors I had were really good and very open and understanding, but every once in a while I would get somebody that would like ask me the opinion of guy teachers, and I can't tell you how many times I've said I don't want to generalize in this conversation because that's one of my biggest fears, is to speak on behalf of other people who may not share the same ideas that I'm speaking about. And so that was always something that was weird to me, like, well, you didn't ask her to speak on behalf of all the girls, like, so that was always strange. Besides that, I was okay with the fact that I was always kind of at the forefront of an instructor's mind. I mean, they knew right away. Everybody knows my name in the College of Education because I was one of four in my graduating class, one of four guys. And so I was okay with that. I never felt uncomfortable with that kind of pressure, but it did kind of,
Did the women resent it? The women in the class resent you getting special attention in there?
I don't think so. I think the people in my class knew that if I got any special attention, it was because of whatever I was doing, not because of my gender. So I don't think that anybody resented it, but I don't know that for sure.
So why administration?
As an administrator at my camp, I really like kind of the big picture stuff, and helping others kind of get to where they need to get to. There's a quote from some basketball coach that's on one of my coworkers' walls, and I don't know who the coach is. But he talks about the manager is not supposed to like micromanage, but they're supposed to be the keeper of the vision, and I think that's something that I really resonate with. In being a school administrator, is the keeper of the vision of the school, and making the right decisions on behalf of other people, And I've said this to people too, because they're like, well, you love being in the classroom, you love being with kids. If you're an administrator, you're not going to do that anymore. Um, and granted, I'm not in that position right now, but I do strongly believe that in that position, I would try to be out of my office more than in it, and be with the kids more than in the office, and be in the hallways more and helping the teachers more. That is the reason that I want to be an administrator, not because of the pay, not because of what I feel a male educator is supposed to do. And so I think that is like kind of what I'm trying to hold fast to as I maybe start that trajectory, is
I,
being an administrator because I was a teacher and because I want to be advocating for people.
I interviewed, oh my God. I had a conversation with Sherry Medwin,
Mhm.
right, who has retired from New Trier. And we talked about the state of education today. What is your vision for a school? And by extension, what's your vision for education in general in America?
Talk about talking out of your purview.
Make it out. No, you have I have an opinion. You have an opinion. This is not out of your purview. You
Yeah,
just said you want to be the keeper of the vision. What would be your
yeah.
vision?
I mean, I think a lot of schools strive to be student centered, student focused, and I think a lot of schools get away from that pretty quickly, because of the politics of public education, or because of any number of things that are hindering the ability to put the students first. And I think, um, at least where I am right now, that's something that I really want to hold strong to, is the idea of like student centered and student focused. So, for example, some of the issues with the COVID protocols that we've experienced, I feel like are putting students in jeopardy. And I've had some conversations with other coworkers who disagree. Um, for example, the water went out at our school one day, and it was the day that we didn't have either of our administrators in the building, which is just the perfect storm. Um, and we had conversations about, well, we need to leave the building, we need to get the kids out, and we need to be gone. And it was towards the end of the day, so the decision that was made was we're kind of just going to stick it out. Everyone could still go to the bathroom, we just couldn't flush the toilets, and we had enough hand sanitizer to feed an army. You don't feed that, but you know, um, so we're just kind of stick it out. And so in having conversations afterwards, we talked about, well, if the water was out, then the fire sprinklers wouldn't work. Um, and some of the arguments that people brought up were, well, what are the chances that there's a fire the same day that the water's out? And I said I don't want to take those odds in 2020 or 2021, as a joke, but I also but that is something where, as an administrator, I feel like I would be making the decision to do that in a different way, because I'd be thinking about the potential of the impact on students, not necessarily the what are the chances kind of thing. And I know I am not the administrator in that situation. There was a thousand things happening in the background, I'm sure, but just like those are the kind of things that are motivating me to do that, because I want to be keeping the vision.
So in the end, you stuck it out.
Yeah,
Okay. So do you think that American education policy for elementary school, do you think it's child centered right now?
I don't. Again, it's hard to say because I know there's a lot of stuff happening in the background. But I think there are a lot of things that happen that might be bureaucratic or red tape oriented, that don't need to be happening and don't feel very child focused.
Like what? Do you have something in mind?
We're taking the Illinois standardized assessment this year, and it just seems like that's I understand that they might want the data, and I totally get that. And again, as a future administrator, I totally get that maybe the state wants the data to see how COVID impacted XYZ. That to me also seems like one of those things where we really want this data. Also, is that a burden that we want to put on everybody? Probably not. Let's move on and just call it a wash. Um, and so it like things like that, where I just feel that those are little hints of, are you really thinking about the students first, or are you thinking about the reports that you need to pull, and the data that you need to collect, and couldn't we be champions and advocates for the students and the fact that they are surviving and making it through this year, and that is enough. And all the social emotional impacts that this year has had, let's throw the curriculum out the window, let's throw the standardized tests out the window, and just like make sure they're okay. They're carrying a lot of anxiety with them.
Mm.
um, and my students make me notes and write me cards and draw pictures all the time, and one out of every 10 is usually like, I wish that COVID wasn't here so I could hug you, or I wish COVID wasn't here so we could do projects together and work together, or things like, I mean, it comes up all the time. And so if it's coming up enough for them to say it, I can't even begin to imagine what's happening in their head that they're not articulating. So do we want to spend our time taking the standardized test, or could we use that time for something else?
Well, do you believe in general that standardized testing is useful for our kids and for our country? Do you think that there should be minimum standards that are set and benchmarks that have to be reached?
Also hard to say. I just know there are a lot of experiences that I have where I'm talking with a parent or I'm talking with a former teacher of a student, and like, yeah, they're not a good test taker, and that phrase comes up a lot. So then I kind of wonder, why are we tying all these things to something that a bunch of people are not good at? And it's hard to be able to standardize a holistic analysis of a student and kind of compare one of my students to the other third graders in the country. But it's also hard to compare one of my students who's terrible at taking tests, and I'm sure because it's a standardized test, she can't sit next to me at the back table and take it. She has to be at her own seat. I'm sure she's going to finish the standardized test in 2 minutes because she's just going to guess all the answers. And so it's hard for me to think that that is valuable data for somebody.
Yeah, it's been really hard I mean, it's always been hard for teachers, but particularly since was it Clinton years or Obama years? Maybe it was Obama years, with Arnie Duncan trying to come up with these standards, and made it more difficult for teachers to be able to be child-centered. Because
Right.
if every child learns differently and is from a different, right, nucleus, I mean, how can you standardize that? And at the same time, don't you need some kind of baseline for society?
Right. And I think about all the time that is being foregone because we're preparing for standardized testing. I mean, that was my conversation I had in conferences this past week, is that's going to start happening after spring break. Third grade is the first year you take it, so we're going to spend a lot of time showing them the user interface and showing them the test questions and what is it really asking, and here's how you type in your response, here's how you make a fraction. And I think about all those minutes, hours, days that we're spending doing that we could be continuing with the things that they learn in
Right.
third grade, and at the end of the year have some wiggle room and time to do some projects and things like that. And I think it's valuable for them to be prepared for this test because I don't want to throw them in blind. And I've echoed to them that I'm not anxious about the test, so I don't think you should be. I'm not going to get fired if you do bad. I've told them that to their, like, I don't want them to freak out. I don't want them to think our school is going to close if they do bad, but I want them to do their best because I always want them to do their best. But couldn't that time be spent better doing something else?
Okay, so I got two more questions for you.
Go for it.
Number
I feel
one,
like I'm rambling, so
no, you're not. Trust me, I'd tell you if you were. I'd
okay.
cut you off. It's been great, actually.
Good.
34-year-old David Pollak looking at education in America. How does it look different 10 years from now?
A lot more technology. I think if you had asked me this question before the pandemic, I think I would have a different answer. But I think through the pandemic, we've learned that society in general can function remotely. It's not ideal, and you lose a huge amount of social interaction and just ability to communicate with people. I mean, my roommate's been working from home for a year now, and he's like, it's still weird when I see people. He's like, I feel like I need to learn how to talk to people again. And so I think education is going to be impacted in the sense that we already don't have snow days anymore. If there's a snow day, we have remote learning packets, and I get on a group FaceTime with my kids and kind of set them on their day. So I think very, very much technology focused, very much not a lot of breaks anymore. You know, as a kid, you have a snow day, it's a day off of school. Maybe you go another extra day in the summer, but the immediate gratification of you don't have school in this day in January is fine.
We all love snow days. This is the first year like we don't want snow days this year. I mean,
Right.
for those of us at home, but yeah, I get it.
Right.
I get it.
But I mean, now it's, oh, we have a snow day. All right, get on and do your work, and then I'll see you tomorrow. I mean, so there's that kind of stuff that I feel like is going away. I know there are some advantages to that. I mean, again, once you set the school year calendar, are you still there?
Yeah.
You're frozen.
Oh, really? Keep going. Keep going.
Oh, okay. Sorry,
Keep
you were
going.
frozen. So, I mean, there are some advantages in the fact that once you set the school calendar, if you have snow days now, it's not going to impact it later. But there's also just, again, that social emotional piece of we're taking away all the opportunities for kids to play a little bit.
To be
Um,
kids, to be,
yeah.
yeah.
And so the more technology you introduce, again, the more hands-off stuff you're taking away, hands-on stuff you're taking away. And so that's kind of where I see it going. I'm sure there are lots of cool things that we're doing with technology that lets kids learn in a different way and understand things that they haven't been able to understand before. So I know there'll be some of that. I just, in thinking of the future, can only think about the negative impacts right now. Um, I'm an optimistic person. I don't want you to think that I'm,
I know you, David.
but I can only kind of think about the impacts in that
Yeah.
way, not necessarily the oh these things that I have no idea how they're going to work are going to come out and we'll be able to use them in class.
I mean, it's not a fair question, on one level, because 10 years ago we had not had the access that we have now to the technology that we have,
Right,
COVID or no COVID. So who knows
right,
what's going to be around in 10 years, and who knows the impact on learning in general that it's had, right? Who
right.
kids who grow up with this. All right, my last question: are you doing flat, Mr. Pollak again this year?
We'll see. I did that because I wasn't going to be. I still have like 40 of them in my in my closet over there. But I did that because I wasn't going to be able to see my students, and so I kind of sent them to get them excited and take some pictures. I still have students from last year that said they still have them. I'm in a Barbie doll house in somebody's house. I'm on someone's desk somewhere else.
I've been planning all year. I've
All
just been
right.
like, I'm like,
Okay.
I got to bring. I mean, it sounds kind of creepy, but I
That's okay.
mean, so if you do it again, let me know.
All right. If I do it again, I'll send you them. I think the three-dimensional Mr. Pollock is seems to be handling it okay right now. We'll see if I need some reinforcements. I thought about doing it. We only had the one snow day this year so far, but if for some reason we have some kind of extended shutdown or something, or maybe over the summer, I'll send them out because I know the kids really liked them last year.
David, it's great seeing you. Thanks for taking the time.
Always
Really,
good to see you too.
good luck to you.
Thank
And
you.
that ends our episode this time. And I'll see you next time. Take care, everyone.